Welcome to the Kings Beat podcast. I'm James Ham, a Kings insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. Joining me, Fox 40's Sean Cunningham. Mr. Cunningham, how are you?
Mr. Ham, I am present and accounted for this week. I guess I got the first part of last week, but
Yeah.
yeah, I had a little travel schedule, but back where it's warm in the house, sun is shining even though it's freezing outside. Get that weather in. Good to see you guys.
All right. And of course, Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast. Brenden, how are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good. I would be a little curious. I know people love when we start with non-basketball related conversations, but I am a little curious about Sean's trip, if we're allowed to start with that.
What do you want to talk about? Like the whole thing?
Yeah.
We tried cheesesteaks, but we did the touristy cheesesteaks. So we did a segment on Fox 40 of us trying Pat's and Geno's because they're on these corners and they face each other like Spider-Man, pointing at each other with these big kiosks. And Geno's is a little bit more over the top with their kiosk. We started at Pat's, tried that one first, stepped right on this little square where it says Sylvester Stallone stood here while shooting Rocky. And I'm like, the whole time, just that one spot, but that's where they immortalize it. And then on the others, tried that cheesesteak, ate it, went over to Geno's, tried that, only ate about half because it was not as good. Pat's was better, but they're both rather overrated. So then all the locals say, don't go to either one. Go to Ishkabibbles or Jim's, which burned down, or Delisandro's, or it's all these. They're all named after men except for Ishkabibbles and whatever, but like all these just have first names. So we tried that, did all the touristy stuff, like saw the Liberty Bell, went to the Sixers Nuggets game, which was incredible. We can talk about that.
What a game.
Yeah, and I'm not even talking about the NFC Championship because holy cow. Just
What a letdown.
what happened? I mean, like I was just talking to someone a minute ago. Like I cover a lot of high school football in this region, and you'll face teams that don't have kickers, so they always go for two because they have to. They don't have no one to kick the ball. That's what it felt like. We don't have a quarterback anymore. The guy has a torn ligament in his elbow and just can throw for 5 or 10 yards and didn't know it was torn at the time, but knew that he had pain shooting all the way through his arm from his wrist to his elbow. And all he could do was hand off. And let's be honest, when Josh Johnson got out there, he looked like he shit the bed as well. 2 delay a game penalties. The former Mountain Lion fumbles the ball. I mean, it was just nightmare. And then I'm thinking to myself, Kyle Juszczyk is the emergency quarterback, break in case of fire, break glass in case of fire, and they never went to him once. In fact, they had Christian McCaffrey throw the ball. Insane. It just like the game was completely kaput in that first quarter for the most part. And look, they're professional athletes. They all think that they can go out and win a game no matter what the circumstances are, but you weren't winning that game.
Yeah, I didn't think the Niners defense was great either. I thought that there was plenty of mistakes that were made in that game. It's just, it was horrible to watch. It was horrible to watch. I would have hated to be there in person, especially if you're someone who spent thousands of dollars on tickets. I mean, even if you're Eagles fans, I mean, you're just watching this thing and whine like, well, this isn't really fun. Like, this isn't an actual football game. So, yeah, I think they need to address quite a few things in the offseason. Specifically, like, I don't know how you walk into an NFC championship game with Josh Johnson as your backup quarterback. And I get it. He's your 4th quarterback at that point in the season. But realistically, you had 8 weeks to, like, have someone better. And I don't know that there is a bunch of better players out there that could have helped you. But the other thing is, like, you knew Brock Purdy he's a rookie. And Josh Johnson's like 35, 36 years old, hasn't played hardly at all. Like, could you have not had a 3rd quarterback on the roster? That seems like it would have been prudent. Just because you knew going in that you already had a young quarterback. You knew going in that the Eagles' pass rush was incredible and they're going to hammer your quarterback. So, yeah, I thought it was just a downer to watch. It was.
Well, and now you get the Eagles with the Chiefs at the Rihanna concert, which is going to take center stage. So
the Rihanna concert.
And hey,
you got it.
We are. Yep, there we are. This is what I was hoping for, but I'm gonna move the mic out so we can see it.
You might need to stand up so we can see the whole thing.
Oh.
You got it. That's all it was.
Oh,
just a little peek.
All right. Sweet. All Okay, Brenden, what did you
Brenden,
think of the
go ahead.
game? Yeah, you asked us.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that it was just a super disappointing thing to witness. Like, you realize pretty early on that there's just no chance, and that's
Yeah.
so sad. Um, just to experience, like, it just felt like we were robbed of what could have potentially been a good game. I didn't think the defense was great, but I've been surprised at how much people are on that when your offense is going 3-and-out that often, and you're on the floor on the field that much, and the opposing team's getting the ball in good field position a couple of times. Like it was just a tough thing to witness. I will say that next game was great to watch, though. I wish that I was a fan of one of those teams because that was a great experience. Like I've been a admitted Mahomes hater. I can't
Why?
do all the hype. I'm definitely just got super triggered during the Niners playoff run when they went to the Super Bowl against them, and
And
when
faced him one time and lost.
well, because I was so annoyed at the commentary of I think that they had come back from a deficit in every single game up to that point. And
Huh.
everybody, the Niners are up, what, a touchdown or 10 points, something like that in that game. And they were like, Mahomes has him right where he wants him. And it just pissed me off so much. Right. I couldn't do all the commentary around Mahomes. So it's more so less to do with him and more so how everybody talks about him. But his performance was phenomenal. I mean, to have that high ankle sprain, clearly limping around, and then take care of business in Burrowhead was a great game.
It was a good game. So I am an admitted Mahomes, like he's my dude. My fantasy team, me and my son share, is rolling with Mahomes. We've had him as our keeper quarterback since his first year. My son actually decided to choose him. We had, I think, in the first draft, we had taken Matthew Stafford early, who was coming off a pretty decent season. And then I'm like, I don't really trust Stafford. We should get a backup quarterback. And we were sitting there in like the 7th or 8th round, and Kirk Cousins was still on the board. I'm like, okay, well, I mean, at least he can manage if we need him. And my son goes, well, how about this Mahomes kid? He seems like there's a lot of buzz about him. And I'm like, all right, well, it's on you. You know, whatever happens, it's on you. I was just messing with him. And he got up and drafted him. And like we've won 2 championships and lost in 1 Super Bowl with Mahomes as our quarterback. So we have Mahomes jerseys because we like to taunt the people that we play against in fantasy football. I don't have other football jerseys, but you know we do have like our championship ring. So this was the original championship ring.
Ooh, that's some bling.
And then our new one. Let me see if I can reach it.
Oh.
The new one is spectacular.
Oh, it looks even bigger. Look at that.
Yeah, so yeah, these are a blast. We buy ourselves championship rings. But yes, we have our hardware.
Got more rings than the team you cover.
Yeah. True that.
Jalen Hurts was my fantasy quarterback this year, and to see him, I was like, you know, I agree with you 100%. By the way, Brennan. I mean, the defense was on the field far too long. I mean, obviously, James, you made the mistakes that totally cost them reference for sure. But I also thought there were some pretty bad calls, especially that punting, the roughing the kicker. I thought that blocked into him. That one just sent me through the roof. But yeah, man, like that you don't have a quarterback, it's not going to matter, and you can't just be like the Niners like to run the ball. Both teams do, not that much. You can't do it every play, and it was just like it's like taking a guy's leg away and asking him to still win a fight. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it was ugly. It was not fun to watch. I think we can say the same thing about the Sacramento Kings game against the first game on Saturday against Minnesota Timberwolves. It wasn't fun to watch. They just got pummeled early by D'Angelo Russell. They got pummeled late by Anthony Edwards. I thought, to me, it was one of those games where you looked at a team that didn't look like they were prepped and ready to go into a game. And that's not to call out the coaching staff. I just think the team, you know, historically we've seen it plenty of times with the Kings where they they don't show up for a game, and that's what that game felt like in Minnesota. Before we start breaking down all of these two Timberwolves games, let's just get to some of the business. If you're watching on YouTube, we would appreciate a thumbs up and a subscribe. That would help us. If you're listening on whatever platform you're listening to, that you listen to your podcast, first of all, me and Brenden did a podcast on Thursday. For some reason, it didn't go up onto audio platforms until Saturday, even though I was like hounding Podbean nonstop about the issue. And so, like our last episode, that should not have happened. I have no idea what happened. We've never had an issue before. And then they act like, oh, well, sometimes there's delays. It's like there's never been a delay. We're like, 250 plus episodes, 300 and something episodes, including my previous podcast that got brought over. But here on the Kings Beat, this is our 122nd podcast. And up until 120, we had no problems at all. 121, we have all kinds of mess trying to get it up on onto audio platforms. So sorry about that. I have no idea. It's one of those computer things that are above my pay grade. And then lastly, Thursday. We're not going to have a Thursday podcast because we're going to have the Off the Record with the Kings Beat virtual happy hour part 11, The Columnist, with Aileen Voisin. Aileen, of course, is a incredible storyteller and someone who has been around the game of basketball for, 40 years. And it should be a really, really interesting conversation. Hopefully Sean can make it because Sean and Aileen have a unique relationship and have known each other forever. Shakes. I also have known Aileen for well over a decade, and she's a trip, and she's going to be lively. And the happy hours are all off the record, and we do have a few drinks in us. And I can only imagine that one is going to be a wild one. So just a heads up to everybody there that I think that should be fun. So if you want to take part in the happy hour, make sure to jump on board with the Kings Beat with a premium subscription. Just if you want to try it out, it's only going to be $7 for the first month to try it out, and you'll get like one of the crazy experiences that I think that you're going to find as far as like hearing media members chat in a different way. So that's on Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30. What is that, February 2nd? But yeah, lots of good things happening. So I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts? Was I too harsh on the Sacramento Kings when talking about the loss to Minnesota on Saturday?
I don't think so. I mean, it was a pretty lackluster effort at first. I mean, I think you heard Coach Brown be pretty disappointed also. Like, sure, D'Lo and Anthony Edwards were just kind of hitting everything that they put up from beyond the arc, but the coverage was pretty tough from the Kings. And I think it's night and day, like especially watching that second game, just how clear the lack of effort was in the first, because they came out and you could see the effort and just kind of imposing your will, making sure you're playing with pace, having good defensive presence and everything. Like you saw it in that second game, and it just made it even more clear that that was lacking in the first one. I thought that, offensively, sure, they could have been better. And typically that's where that team is, that the Kings have made their money and gotten their wins. But defensively, they were a total disappointment in that one.
Yeah, I didn't get to see much of that first game, so it's probably a good thing. All I know is Naz Reid pretty much had some ownage on the Kings in that first game. And, Anthony Edwards ends up with collective the two games. I mean, it's like he ends up back in the All-Star conversation again, a little more loudly than people were probably talking about a week ago and even a week before that. So it's going to be interesting to see when coaches actually casted their ballots as well. And that could go for De'Aaron Fox consideration as well. But kind of bringing it back to those games, just reading most and just seeing some highlights, it didn't look like a fun game. It kind of looked from, what I ended up watching the entire game yesterday after I got off the plane, and it was that looked like more of the Sacramento Kings that I remembered before, honestly, before leaving for Philadelphia and before they went on their road trip. And to be honest, that bench unit probably played its best game in a while collectively, in my estimation. I was trying to think of maybe when that last game where I saw them play such a complete game like that, both offensively and defensively. I mean, Trey Lyles continues to impress. I think he might have had another of his finest, maybe top 2 games of the season. I think Monk had, we've talked about his shooting struggles and his turnover battles and all that, but it kind of looked a little bit more like himself. Having Terrence Davis back in the lineup was interesting as well. And I know, that was coming off that first game where Mike Brown is talking about so much about possibly shaking things up defensively. Team defense doesn't always look great when Terrence Davis is on the floor, and he tends to be a little bit better of a one-on-one defender. And I thought, for the most part, that second unit in the second game really held their mud. So in contrasting that to the first game, that was probably the 2 things that kind of stood out the most to me.
Yeah, I'm going to bring up something with the first game that, to be honest, it's something that we've seen in the past, but I thought that Fox just kind of like hung out for 3 quarters and then put his foot down and scored 21 of his 29 in the fourth. Like, I kept wondering, like, does he know that we're all watching him play? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like again, I've coached enough sports that you're like looking out on the field and you're waiting for someone who's dogging it to look over at you.
Are you saying he was out there picking dandelions for, like...
I don't know what he was doing. All I know is that the guy that he was guarding put up 23 in the first half and that he was a non-factor, and he started out like 0 for 3 or 0 for 4 from the field and just didn't look like he had the oomph to get them going. And then it's like, hey, look at me. I can throttle up and blow everybody off the doors, when realistically the game's already over. And so I was let down. I was let down by the entire process of him in that game. And I get it. These guys are tired. They're beat up. They've had, anytime you have a prolonged winning streak, you usually have a letdown after for a couple of games where you're just trying to get your energy back up after expending so much, winning, and then having that gut punch when you do lose one. It's like we saw it the first time, right? They won 7 games, then they lost 3. This time they won 6 games, then they lost 1, won 1, lost 2, so they lost 3 out of 4. And this one, to me, like, I was disappointed. And, again, he was brilliant in the fourth quarter, but like, you're so overshadowed at that point by what's happened with Minnesota. You've already let Anthony Edwards just kind of like just dominate you in the second half. And I wasn't super jazzed about what I was watching. And then we get to the next game and it's like, okay, he got the message. Somebody had a conversation with him.
How often, guys, was he paired up with Russell? Because D'Angelo Russell's a guy who absolutely has torched them. I mean, everyone remembers that, 27-point quarter that he had against him a while back. And I felt that was in his mind. And again, I didn't watch the first game of Minnesota like I wanted to, but the victory in Minnesota, I felt like he had a different approach for sure. But it seemed like he was taking that personally, like that matchup with Russell was going to be something that he would take more on himself. I don't know what it looked like more so in that first game, though.
Yeah, the first game, I remember they ran the highlight package, and I was watching the highlight package just to see who was defending Russell on most of his shots, and it was a bunch of people. They're switching defense. I don't want to blame it all on Fox, for sure. There was 1 or 2 3-point shots, but look, that's a team thing. Like, the guy, it's not just that he started 8 of 8 from the field. It said he went 7 of 7 from 3. Like, take the 3 ball away. I mean, like, that's not that difficult. I mean, sure, he's a very, very good shooter, especially when you're pressed up on him, but like, just take it away, trap him, do whatever you got to do, like, break his rhythm so he stops launching on you. And that was my bigger disappointment, was the lack of adjustment, the lack of energy by a couple of players. But I don't know. I don't want to put all those scoring numbers on Fox at all. I think he was okay. I don't think he was great. But certainly there were other people that were caught off guard by the shooting of Russell as well, right, Brenden?
Yeah, I think it goes on everyone, but I think it's fair to place a decent bit of it on De'Aaron. I mean, we've heard Coach talk about him being the head of the snake defensively and the one that sets the tone out there. And you saw him do just that in that second game. He came out and I thought was playing phenomenally defensively against D'Angelo Russell. And they also were defending him a little bit differently, started kind of doubling or hedging him there to take that away. But I think it does go on everybody. But I think it's totally fair to ask more of De'Aaron when he's the star of this team. And the point of attack defense and ball pressure is what's going to help motivate or, as you see on some nights, maybe bring your guys down to your same level of poor defense if that's the case. But I think that point of attack defense that starts with De'Aaron is so important for setting the rest of the tone. So it goes on everybody for sure. We're always hearing that defense is a 5-man thing, that it's never all on one person, but he is able to set the tone. And we saw that second night in Minnesota. And I guess you could even say the first night he possibly set the tone in a way that you don't want to see. So I think I love that he responded. I think offensively for those first 3 quarters, kind of saw what you saw, James, but at the same time, like, I don't know that that's super rare for De'Aaron to, I mean, maybe to that extent was much, but usually you see other guys, right? Like I think Harrison Barnes usually has pretty good first quarters, and that wasn't quite happening. He ended game 1 of 7. He did have 10 of 11 from the free throw line, important to acknowledge, but I thought the HB was a little quiet. Like I think offensively, I wasn't too worried about him in those first 3 quarters, but defensively for sure was. And I feel like we shouldn't just gloss over the 21 points in the fourth quarter because that's insane. To put, I know that it came in a losing effort, and that's what really matters at the end here. But like again and again, he's looking like Jerry West out there, and the way that he bounced back, it's
Let's
just
settle
down.
down.
The name of the
My
award.
guy.
Hey, he's going to, at this rate, will obviously still has to keep up. At this rate, he's in very serious consideration for that award.
Yes, and I'm good with the award, but with any Jerry West comparisons, just we need to pump the brakes on my guy. I will say, it's just a familiar theme, and we've seen probably less of it this year, which I think is the biggest encouraging sign. But the biggest criticism of De'Aaron Fox is him keeping his foot on the gas, and this would kind of play into that criticism. But it's been a lot fewer and farther between compared to previous seasons where we've seen long stretches of it.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. We have 2 games, one where he scores 29 and one where he scores 31, 32. I feel so much better about the second game where he scores 30-something.
Yeah.
And the point differential is so narrow. It's that one game he scored 8 points through 3 quarters, and then, or is that what it was? 8 points and then finished with 29, right? So 21 in the fourth. And then the other game, again, he was really good in the fourth, but he had 13 at half. I marked that. He was active in the third quarter. He had a big fourth quarter again to help put his team over the top, and then the overtime session. And then the other thing, I want to give him props for certain things that I see. He has, made concerted efforts to make his teammates better this season. And, you see that there are points where the team just hands everything over to him, like in the fourth quarter. But we keep seeing these moments where, what was the game where they lost, the tight game where they lost at home, where Keegan Murray hit a 3 in the corner in the final 20-something seconds of the game, where De'Aaron Fox drove in and kicked it to a guy who hadn't been able to hit a shot all night.
Was that the Sixers game?
Yeah, it might have been the Sixers game.
I think the Sixers one, yeah.
Yeah, so there are these moments where he's finding guys. The Trey Lyles stuff in the overtime session, I thought was tremendous. He found him underneath the basket. He does look for his teammates and looks for them in big moments where he understands that everyone is drawn to him, and he's setting them up and letting his teammates succeed as well. So that's a good thing. It's a good thing to see the growth of him. I just need to see it for the whole game. And I get some nights you're tired. Some nights, whatever the problem is, he's got a lot on his mind. He's got a baby on the way and everything else. But the consistency from one quarter to the next needs to kind of level out, not just one game or 1 week to the next. When it comes to Fox, in my opinion. Let's get to the crazy weird stuff that happened with Sabonis in the Minnesota game last night. Like, how strange was that? Like, first of all, it appeared that they threw him out of the game, right? So he gets a technical for screaming, yelling at an official. He was very frustrated. And then, like, he gets ushered up. They go to commercial break with him getting ushered into the locker room by team security. Then we come back from commercial break, and there he is. Of course, none of us are in Minnesota. Even the one local reporter that is in Minnesota, which is Chris Biederman, tweeted out that Sabonis has been thrown out of the game because that's what it looked like on the court. But what did you guys make of that whole scene? And then I guess a bigger question is, did you like the officiating in the game? Because it seemed a little wonky yet again.
A little? No, it was really bad. It was really bad, and it reached its peak level at that travel by McDaniels, right? Wait, no, who was it?
Yeah. No, you're right.
Yeah, just an absolute awful call right in front of the official, which was even probably more.
Where are the thoughts and prayers? Like,
look, we've talked a lot. We've talked a lot about officiating this season, and
yes.
I think we've used terms like egregious and debated whether or not we could use that term.
I think you've used the term dreck.
Oh, I've used that a lot. That was about the most insane non-call. I think it's the worst one of the year. I know there'd probably be Kings fans that would scoff at that, but that to me was probably among the worst one of the year. Yeah, it just wasn't great. To the Sabonis part, I even hit up some people to ask about it that moment, and like somebody had like thought that it was literally. I know security was with him; they were with him pretty much every step of the way. It was almost like Sabonis took it upon himself to go in the tunnel, basically to scream and to let it all out, or whatever. I don't know what it is, but
punch the Timberwolves guy.
Yeah, I don't think anybody had to remind him that he wasn't thrown out of the game, and you wouldn't have known that by watching TV. I even had a buddy of mine who was at the game as a fan, and at no point thought he was ejected from the game. So. One of those interesting things. I mean, certainly he got back out on the floor and fouled out sometime later. But, I felt, too, that Sabonis was like a DeMarcus Cousins type of boiling pot, even in the first half. Like, I thought it was already percolating, and I thought it was reaching a peak level as they got to halftime. Because he was just that moment where they both get hit in the face, him and Gobert. That was an odd moment as well. But yeah, that was a tough.
That was a clear foul on Sabonis. Like, I mean, right when you saw the replay, you're like, oh, look at that, he slapped him right in the face.
And the other one too, when he picked up his fifth, I mean, that was 2 hands on the back. I mean, that's I think that was his fifth or the sixth.
That was his sixth.
Sixth one, yeah.
Yeah, his sixth was obvious. Like, what are you doing there? Yeah, Brenden, what do you got?
It was the 2 moving screens for me.
Oh yeah,
I just was not so sure about. Those were tough. I mean, but when's the last time we've seen Sabonis get that angry? Like, I definitely thought he got tossed because he's getting held back screaming at the refs. And obviously it looked like that, like you kind of walked through when you see him go into the tunnel. He's been quietly like struggling a little bit, I think, for his standards. And that's a very high standards that we hold him to because he's been so phenomenal this year. But for him to have 1 assist in that game is just not Sabonis. Like, I think we're seeing teams defend him differently. James and I talked about this on the last recording, and really taking away, trying to force him to be more of a scorer than a playmaker for other players. And I think that obviously that's a huge thing for the Sacramento offense, but we've still kind of are seeing him adjust more often. I mean, he had great individual post moves against reigning defensive player of the year, who knows how many times over. So he can still score and get it done there. But I think that we've seen just teams defend him differently and kind of waiting to see how he adjusts to the adjustments that other teams are throwing his way.
Yeah, it didn't help him that the Kings started, what were they, 1 of 13 from 3?
Yeah.
Is that what they were? Was that the first game where they were 1-13, or was that last night's game? They both
It
kind
was
of
the second game.
Okay, it was the second. Yeah, and they ended up hitting a bunch in the second half, but it was rough. I mean, Kevin Herter had a rough game and sat for I think all the fourth and most of and all the overtime, or at least most of it. Yeah, it wasn't a beautiful game for sure. But like I think Sabonis is at a point where like his expectations have changed, and that's what I think we're seeing a lot of the time. He is really, really on his teammates and demanding more, and I think that's a good thing. It's a sign of leadership. It's also like how many times does he have to carry the load? And we're seeing moments now where other guys can step in and actually play a vital role in what's happening. And again, he's been really good, and I fully expect, without any question, him to get the nod on Thursday when we find out the NBA All Stars. But I don't know. What do you guys think? We're down to the wire. We might as well address it now. Like Keegan Murray gets the Rising Stars challenge today. He will be in the Rising Stars game. Davion Mitchell did not, which to me was not a surprise, just because that's kind of the way the season's gone. But do you think the Kings have two guys at the All-Star game? Do you think they have three? What do you think?
Definitely not three. Who would you think?
Well, three, I mean, with Keegan.
Oh, I'm sorry, with Keegan. Yeah. No, Domantas Sabonis is a shoo-in. There's no possible way that he is not chosen by coaches. That is the safest bet in the history of the world right now. As for Fox, I think it could be. I think it could happen. To me, it really depends. I was having a conversation earlier in the day, and I think it really depends on when coaches filled out their ballot. Did they wait for the last minute? Did they do it weeks ago? Did they? Because look, you're going to reward success, and team success is everything. The Kings have been at third and held their position for about 2.5 weeks, I believe it is now, and they're 3.5 behind Memphis. They're 3.5 separation from 10th, and you're looking at teams like Portland and OKC. Well, obviously Shea is going to be an all-star. He's having an immaculate season despite team success. Damian Lillard is having a remarkable season as well. He came off just a couple weeks ago scoring 50 whatever it was, and I forget how much it was actually, but I mean just over 50 points. He's put up some incredible numbers despite that team being outside of the play-in tournament in the standings. So I think those are the two. And then if Aaron Gordon's going to get any recognition for being Denver's other all-star, if you will, playing at a career best and playing defense the way he has, I think Markkanen's a lock to make it, especially with Utah being the host city. Plus him, I mean, he's just been pretty fantastic all year long anyway. So and then the Clippers have surged up in recent weeks. So I don't know. I don't think Paul George will be in the conversation. I don't think Anthony Edwards is going to be in the conversation. But I think Fox is going to be one of those guys on the possible outside looking in. But it just depends on when coaches did it, because I think if they waited until the last minute and turned it in at the deadline, then it's possible he could make it. But James, you mentioned it. That if you're a coach and you're watching that game, that first game against Minnesota, and let's say you still have a ballot to fill out, although I do believe the ballots were in before that game. I could be wrong.
The 29th at midnight.
20. So that was that Saturday? Sunday.
Yeah,
it was
Sunday.
So if that's the last game that you have in your mind and you're teetering between some others and you're looking at the way Fox played in that game and they lost, but he did go off and score 21 in the fourth, how do you look at that? Are you looking at it as positive or negative? You know what I mean? So I don't know, man. It's gonna be really interesting. To me, it doesn't matter though. It really doesn't matter if he's there. I know fans really want to see him be an all-star, and for whatever reason they take great pride in that. To see, I mean, I don't want that to come off as a negative comment. They put a lot of stock in seeing their Kings recognized on that type of stage, and I get it, especially for a team that doesn't get a lot of national recognition. I get it, but the fact that he's playing like an all-star at the up to the being in that conversation, and it's coinciding with team success, is all that you want right now. And I think that speaks louder than having him be at a silly exhibition game at a time where his babies do. So to me, it doesn't matter, but I think Fox for sure. I mean, Domas for sure. That's the safest bet yet.
I think De'Aaron should be there. If I have to guess, I'll say that I think he will be, and I think it's on the back of. I mean, obviously his numbers are great. The team success. He's 24, 6-4 on 50% from the field. Like, he's played phenomenally, but I think it's the clutch numbers to me that kind of put him over. I think that's his strongest argument. But it's going to be really close. I mean, I think that I do think that Anthony Edwards has a decent case. I think that his numbers and his play, especially as of late, to Sean's point, like, depends when people are putting in their ballots or when they have filled those out. But I think that Anthony Edwards has been phenomenal lately. When it comes to Lillard, like, it's funny that you get to argue team success in favor of the Kings, but I think that's a pretty big argument. It's definitely going to be right on the edge. I think that De'Aaron deserves it. To me, I think the clutch production is what will put him in there. But it's going to be right on the edge. And, it has to do with Devin Booker not being available, or in my mind, not being a part of this because he's been out with an injury. Like, it was always going to take things like that, certain players not being available, for De'Aaron to sneak into this conversation. But to Sean's point, him being in this conversation is important, and like he's playing at a level where this is deserved.
Team success does mean a lot. It's for De'Aaron Fox because he plays in Sacramento. If you're Damian Lillard and you're sixth in scoring, averaging over 30 points a game, it doesn't mean as much. I mean, you're a superstar in the league. To compare the star level of the two players, like, who's going to argue that Damian Lillard? You could argue that he's come down in recent years as a result of injuries and things like that, but coaches know what Damian Lillard is, and it took him a while to even crack the All-Stars. It was him and De'Aaron. If you remember, it was him and DeMarcus Cousins, where it was like those were the two last guys thought of in the Western Conference a lot of times, and they had to put up impeccable numbers. And then, of course, he goes on and has postseason success, and that's out the window. But then he has injuries, misses what sits out that whole year basically, and then here you are. So the resurgence of Portland hasn't been there, but he has. He's shown he's been back to superstar levels and putting up superstar type numbers. I mean, he's 10th in assists, 6th in scoring. De'Aaron statistically isn't anywhere near those. He's not even top 20 in scoring, not top 20 in assists. He's not even, but he is a clutch player, and his team is third. So, if there had to be one, it's Domas, right? But I think there is wiggle room for Fox to get in. I think it depends on when these coaches voted.
Okay, so let's play a quick game. Domas in? Yes, no?
In. Yeah. I mean, duh. We just.
It's bullshit that he's not starting. Excuse my language. It's total BS.
You do not have to apologize for cursing on this podcast, sir.
Lauri Markkanen, in or not?
He's in.
Shea?
In.
Damian Lillard?
Out.
Put a question mark or an asterisk there.
Anthony Davis?
In.
He's going to be in.
Okay, so that puts you at 4. Who am I missing?
Devin Booker, possibly.
Well, Booker. Like,
right.
Booker's played 29 games, and he hasn't played in a long time, and they're bad without him.
Those are the see, and I think if it's up to me, like Lillard, yes, he's an all-star based off the numbers he's put up.
I think so too.
They're in the Shea category, right? But then you get these guys where it's the teetering. You have your locks, and you have the ones where, okay, by virtue of them missing so many games, where are they at? Like, you're missing John Morant.
Mm-hmm.
That's another one that's a shoo-in, right? Memphis success.
No, Jaw's part of the starters, isn't he?
Or starter. He's on starter list. I'm sorry. I said John Morant. I said Desmond Bain. Desmond Bain is a guy who missed a lot of time as well. Sorry, John Morant. Yes, he's a starter. I meant Desmond Bain. He missed a lot of time because, but he was top 10 in scoring at one point. I think he was top 5 in scoring at one point. So he's another guy who's going to be kind of given some consideration based off of Memphis success.
Yeah.
Remind me who the other starter is, Doncic or Curry?
Doncic, Curry.
Both of them, because they put Doncic in the front court.
Yep.
So then Ja is not a starter.
No.
Oh, they put Doncic at front court. I see.
Right.
Yeah, John Curry with Doncic at front court with
LeBron and Zion.
Yeah. Oh, no. Wait, are we missing someone?
Jokic.
Or Jokic, not Zion, yeah.
No, Zion is starting. So no, we're down an all-star spot. So either Ja or no, the backcourt is Luka
It
and
is Luka,
Steph.
Steph, Zion, LeBron, and Jokic.
So
Oh yeah,
Ja.
Ja's not a starter. So there you go. Ja's is at reserve.
Okay. So and there's 7 reserves, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there's 3
Gives you
front
12
court.
total.
Yeah, there's 3 front court, and then, which that could be a problem too. Well, no, because Laurie Markkinen is going to be a front court. Okay. Well, I think it's intriguing. Like I think Fox is going to be right there, and if nothing else, I also think Fox could be like the first injury replacement. So if Zion or Booker makes it and can't play, that you could see them go that direction. So
Which,
and
by the way, I'm pretty sure that if Zion doesn't play, Domas isn't even the replacement in the starting lineup, right? I think it's Laurie.
no, it's up to the coach.
Well, the commissioner
okay.
will choose. By the way, commissioners choose the injury replacement.
Yes,
So it'll
but
be
the
Adam
coach
Silver
chooses a starter.
Right, starter, correct.
Yeah. Whoever is it going to be? Michael Malone?
I think it gets decided. What's the separation? It hasn't been. It's looking that way. I think there was a possibility that I think it could get announced today because doesn't Memphis play today?
Yeah, it's possible. Okay, so it's 2 games, and Boston.
No, Memphis
Boston's
doesn't
head
play
coach was
today.
already announced as the Eastern Conference starter, as the Eastern
Correct.
Conference head coach. Yeah, so we've got Denver is up on Memphis by 2 games. That would be interesting.
Grizzlies play the Blazers on Wednesday, and what's the separation there? They should just announce it then, because if Nuggets don't play either of the 2 days,
Yeah, it's 2 games. Yeah, there's no way they can catch them.
Nuggets play Pelicans tonight. So technically, I guess if they lose, what's the separation in standings right now?
2.
2 games, 2.5. Or I'm sorry, that was Eastern. That was it's 2. Yeah, 2.
Yeah. All right. Well, look, I think it's interesting. Are you guys at all shocked that Davion didn't make it? Rising Stars?
Not really.
Nope.
No, and that's based on just the role he's playing. It's a different. It's different type of role. He's not playing as much as he did the minutes that he had in previous season. And look, the you had a bigger pool of that year's rookies. You're only going to get the cream of the crop from that rookie class now sophomores. So yeah, he's not part of that yet.
Yeah, he had the one game where he busted out for like 19 points, but then since then we've kind of seen a lot of the same stuff. Like his last couple of games, I think, have been like on the offensive end, they're pretty frustrating to watch. Like
Yeah.
he's just dribbling, and you're like, that's not what the plan is. So it's very strange to see one player kind of freelancing and trying to do their thing. But it is what it is. Okay, so
Can I ask you guys a question?
yeah.
What do you think of the Chimezi Metu moment last night, where coach got on him about a defensive possession? I think it was an offensive rebound, and Mezzi kind of barked back a little bit, saying that he was getting back screened, and then they rewatched the play in the huddle, and Mezzi didn't look all too happy. But I'm, heat of the moment. But I'm just curious what your guys' reaction is seeing that.
Go ahead, James.
Yeah, I watched the play, and I wondered why Metu didn't go for the rebound. Like it was they had position, and then they didn't go get the ball, and so I think that's where I would come down to, like, he can be frustrated all he wants, but at the end of the day, like he has to be cautious because he's the guy on the edge of the rotation. He's not somebody who's secured in the rotation at all. And, like, you got to go in there and do your job. And that was a blatant miss. The Kings had 3 guys, and 1 Timberwolf snuck in. It was Naz Reid, right? I think Monk was down there and sort of screening Mezzi's guy, and then Mezzi didn't go get the rebound. That's kind of the way I saw it.
The other thing, I actually didn't see it from the rebound standpoint. I actually thought it had more to do with the way Mezzi reacted to the pick. Because the way they defended the play got kind of disjointed, and I thought that's what actually drew the ire of Mike Brown. But initially, when I saw it, I will say this: I think that's what coaching looks like. For one, the way the player reacted to it may not have been great, but I think that the coaching staff heard him out, and guess what? He was right back out on the floor. So I think a lot of times what I've liked in those moments, even when it's involved Terrence Davis or Domas, or when Mike Brown has pulled out different guys for different reasons, and even seeing the way they've reacted to him, certainly you don't always see a player react to the coach that way, but the message was at least received and heard, and Mike Brown usually goes right back to him rather quickly. And in somebody case like Terrence Davis, he's able to show that he heard the coach and make amends on the other end. So I liked it. I like that he rolled with it. Mezzi's a competitive dude. It's funny for a guy who doesn't get in. Even last year, when he doesn't get in the games a lot, or has his minutes and he has to be super impactful right away, or and make an impact right away, he's a guy who's a little hot-headed and certainly is capable of popping off and grabbing these technicals as he's been known to do. So I think that's just his makeup, and I don't think that anybody reacted in the coaching staff at a shocked or negative or defensive type of way. I think they know what type of player Mezzi is, and I'm glad that they rolled with him.
Yeah, like that is coaching. I like how Sean put that. That's coaching. You're watching someone getting coached, and if he doesn't like it, that's okay. Be better, right?
Right.
And while they did go back to him and they let him play through some of that stuff, they also in the overtime session went with Trey Lyles as a backup center position and went small, and won the game because of it. And so, look, Mike Brown isn't afraid to make some changes and tweak things and go a little sideways on you. Even was it the first game against Minnesota where they put KZ in, and it was watching a train wreck in slow motion. And I felt bad for Chimezie because fans react to him so strangely, because most of the times hey, why aren't you putting KZ in? And then all of a sudden he gets a ball in the perimeter for a wide open three and he won't take it. Then he runs baseline and goes for a floater, which I think he missed by 3 feet. And then the next time down, he got the same opportunity and he shot it and missed. And then it was oh my gosh, okay, look, he's 0 for 1 from 3. Everyone cool down for a minute. He's only playing 4 minutes. It didn't go well, but he's still a good defender and he can help you. And then I'm looking at some of the names that are out there that the Kings could be going and chasing and free at the deadline, and they're a lot like Chimezie. I mean, they're a lot like KZ Okpala. Just maybe they've played a little bit more. That's about it, and that's kind of what you're seeing from some of the guys that they're talking about. And so, look, I think they could upgrade there, but it's one of those weird things where I think the question you initially had was about Chimezie and that whole situation, but I think a lot of the players on this team kind of fall in the same boat, just like Terrence Davis does. We watched Terrence Davis go from out of the rotation to all of a sudden he's playing, and he had some big moments.
He did. Yeah. And I think, even back to Mezzi for a second, I think it just bears repeating, whatever Mezzi said to the coaching staff, they accepted it. You know what I mean? They didn't meet it with resistance. For all we know, Mezzi proved them wrong. We weren't there to be able to ask Mezzi or coach the question about that moment, but I think they were receptive to what he fired back at them. They didn't meet it with any sort of resistance. So again, I like heat of the moment, things like that, especially when they come to an ultimate good ending. And by the way, you mentioned Trey. I know we haven't gotten there yet. I think it's probably coming up, but that overtime period was really impressive to see. And what I liked from it so much was how, on the offensive end, especially when you're going up against somebody like Gobert, it seemed for a greater part of that game, and it could have had to do with the way the team started, the Kings that is, started from the perimeter. James, you mentioned the rough shooting that they were at one point, but in that overtime period, they did not respect the Kings from the perimeter at all. You get someone like Trey who hits the 3-pointer. Lyles leaves him out there to hit that corner 3. I think it was Keegan who hit another 3, and then Lyles gets another opportunity to which Gobert has to now go out there and step out to the perimeter, and he blows right by him for the dunk. Just a really impressive response by the Kings in the overtime, and I thought it was set up beautifully by Mike Brown and that staff, because I kept seeing that they were leaving shooters on the perimeter for a good portion of that game.
Trey was amazing. I think the Kings made 7 threes coming into the fourth quarter, 7 of 27 in regulation. And then going into overtime, I should have said, and then they knocked down those 2 quick ones that were huge. Trey also right before that and one dunk, blowing past Gobert. In a way, at an offensive rebound, or got them another possession by fighting for a board and drawing a loose ball foul. He was just so good. And not only to do what he was doing offensively, but he's tasked with Gobert on the other end. And I know they're switching everything, like we've said before, defense is 5 men out there, but I think that like you didn't notice that mismatch in the way that I think maybe you would think that you would when we're talking about Lyles on Gobert. So he was great on both ends. I think, there's something to him at the 5. I think that like you're searching for backup 5. I don't mind trying Trey Lyles a little bit more. Chris Biederman has been telling me that he thinks that's the way to go, and let me know about it last night a little bit. But Trey was great, and I think playing with that a little bit more could be interesting.
Yeah, Trey has played a lot of 5 in his career. He talked about he played most of the time last season in Detroit at the 5. And so he has played plenty of it. He's a big, thick, big body guy. So even though he's lost weight, he still put a little bit of that back on during the season. And I think the best thing to do is to play your 8 or 9 best players, and Trey certainly fits into that. And it doesn't matter where you're playing him. You just got to get him minutes. And I think some people could say the same thing about like Terrence Davis in the past has been so effective for this team, and like why isn't he in there? It's like, well, because you have to make choices. It's, do I put Trey Lyles, who goes off for 8 points in the overtime session and literally wins a game for you? And by my count, that's probably like 6 games this season where the Kings would not have won if it wasn't for Trey Lyles. Legitimately 6 games. And I don't think anyone else off the bench you can say that about. Even Malik Monk. I don't know that there's 6 games that he's been that good where he meant the difference between you winning and losing a game. And I just think Trey's been really, really spectacular. And when the Kings are assessing what they're doing at the trade deadline, they do have to consider, like, is Trey going to be part of this picture next year, the year after? He is on the final year of his deal. But, like, I'm not saying you don't make a move because you have Trey Lyles, but I'm also saying, like, you don't have to make a move because you do have Trey Lyles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think him emerging as a staple in the rotation is important for this team. Getting to 9 guys is big, and they're trying to go back to Terrence Davis a little bit recently. He had some good minutes in that second game against Minnesota, but depth is obviously important, and the bench production is kind of waivers for this team. But getting what you did last night was pretty essential.
That might have been Trey's second best game of the season. First, where do you guys rank that?
He had 24 a couple of days earlier and won it, and helped win a game for you.
He had a 15-6 fourth quarter against Houston.
Right, but yeah, I'm saying again, even defensively, he's so undersized going up against Gobert. I think that whole second unit was pretty much popping. I thought pretty well. I don't know. I think I put it up there. I think it's probably top 2. I think I really like the way he's just, and maybe it's just peaking at the right time for him too, because he's put together like over a month's worth of really impressive contribution from the bench.
Yeah, I think he's been really good. You're right, Brenden. He did have 20 against Houston. He had a big early in the season. He had 16 against Cleveland in a win. Yeah, he's come through. There's even one game where he grabbed a bunch of rebounds. There's a loss to Denver where he had 10 boards, but I just think he's one of those players who's really, really smart, and he doesn't make a bunch of mistakes, and every once in a while, he misses a few too many shots, but you're like, well, I thought most of them were going in anyways. Okay, let's get to the business of basketball. I don't say that with the same luster I used to. I need to
know.
figure
It's
that
like
one
you're
out.
bored with it.
No, I'm not. But sometimes we do have to fit it in, and I want to take two things here. Number one, just like pull the audience. The Kings are 1-1 on the 7-game trip. We're looking at San Antonio, Indiana, New Orleans, and Houston twice. What do you think they finish the trip at?
Well, I haven't thought that far ahead yet in terms of what the trip maybe could or should look like, but you're right, James. These are not good teams, and you look at the Pelicans; they've lost 9 of 10.
They lost 8 in a row. Did they win last night?
8 in a row and 9 of 10. Yeah, it's 8 in a row and 9 of 10, and all these teams are, with the exception of like the Pacers, like they're just not good. So,
Well, the Pacers aren't good either. They've lost 10 out of 11 without Tyrese.
correct. But they could have Tyrese back at that game. I think like, these are two. I'm looking at that Pacers game, first game back for Sabonis, right, to Indiana, that he'll play in because obviously went back last year and wasn't playing, or actually he didn't because he was suspended. He was hurt. He had the injury. He didn't make it back. So this will be the first time he's made it back, and there'll be some emotions there. But I don't know. It's got to be a winning record for sure, and I think it's a good opportunity to build more equity in that record because now being 7 games over 500, man, can you imagine if they could come back 3 games over 500, 10 games over 500, 9 games over 500? Be pretty impressive.
Yeah, Brendan. They got to win a lot to get to. I think they'd have to go 4-1 in their last. Yeah, they'd have to go 4-1 in the last 4 of this. Oh, that's only 6. Okay. Yeah, I don't think they can come back 10 games over.
No,
I think they
they
can
won't.
come back 9
They'd
or
have to
11.
win them all.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, no. They don't have to win them all to come back over 10 games over. Because they have 5 games left on the trip, so if they're 7 games over, that put them at 12. So if they went 4-1, that would put them at 10 games over.
10, yeah.
Okay. We're back. The math is working.
We're not good at math. We're not good at math, especially me.
I usually am.
9
The
games,
math
though. Hey,
wasn't working there.
if you can go 5, right? I don't know.
So what are you guys thinking? 5-2 on the trip, 6-3 on the trip. I'm not 6-3. 6-1. They could still go 6-1. They could go 5-2. 4-3 is kind of like the minimum that you'd hope, right, coming into the trip.
Right.
For sure. Anything less than that is a disappointment. I think 4-3 is realistic. It's still a road trip. I know New Orleans is struggling. That's still a talented team. There's that first Houston game is the second night of a back-to-back. I know New Orleans to Houston isn't a crazy trip or anything, and Houston is a horrible team. But it's tough on the road. Like I think you're just happy with over 500 on the road. 4-3 would be my guess. Although I would really like to see a 5-2. If you could win 5 of these next 6 games, it doesn't feel like a crazy ask considering competition level. And I think it's fair to ask more of this team based on what we've seen so far. That they have a little bit of wiggle room with this 3rd seed in the Western Conference, but solidifying yourself even more is important because, there's sure 2 games between them and 4th, but at the same time, what is this, 3.5 games between them and 10th? So I think solidifying yourself even more so is obviously important.
And that Spurs team has lost 9 of 10, 6 straight, and they're next.
And then after that, it's Indiana who's lost, I think it's 10 of 11. And then after that, it's the Pelicans who have lost 8 in a row as of right now.
Yeah.
And then after that, it's the worst team in basketball for 2.
Yes.
They've lost to some pretty bad teams, though. The Charlotte game was horrible. The Washington game was horrible. Like, there's been some games this year.
They've lost to Eastern Conference bad teams, which is different.
I was also having a conversation yesterday about just how the luck of health that they've had. And I don't want to jinx anything, but I had to illustrate to a person that that they've been lucky to be healthy, but they've also got 2 dudes playing with essentially the same injury with banged up hands, and Sabonis and Murray. So, just kind of blessed overall with the health department.
Yeah, I would agree. Okay, let's get to the second part of the business of basketball. Go ahead.
Real quick, I do think this is Sabonis' first time back in Indiana. I
Yeah.
don't think he played last year, so that'll be a fun one to see how he is there.
I just said that.
He did.
That's okay.
He wrote it on the paper. Car ramrod.
I might have been looking things up.
He has no idea what that is.
He doesn't know it. Can I get a liter of cola, Brenden?
Super Troopers.
Super Troopers.
But no, you're right though, and I don't think, honestly, I don't think that we should be talking more about that, because I think they probably will be in Indiana. But sometimes when guys have their first game back, that doesn't always go great. So they need to probably have that game marked as a game that possibly Sabonis won't play so well.
How do you go in there knowing that he might not play well? Okay, let's get to the other thing that like we get the trade deadline in like 9 days, right? Today's the 31st, so was it next Thursday is what we're looking at?
Yeah, what are you expecting?
What are we expecting? We keep hearing like little murmurs of little stuff. Like there's a Matisse Thybulle rumor that went out yesterday. Someone asked me, again, this is like fan stuff, but that someone had heard that there was a possibility that the Kings might get in on the Jay Crowder trade with Milwaukee, but not for Jay Crowder, that they would take back Jordan Nwora in that deal and maybe give up a second-round pick or something. We've heard other names, like I think a couple of us, like there are guys out there that all kind of fit this same exact mold. Does that kind of make sense?
Matisse Thybulle, right?
Yeah, Nwora.
Nwora has that Nigerian national team connection.
Yep. Yeah, and but it looks like the Kings are basically looking for like a more experienced version of KZ Okpala. Does that make sense?
I think Thybulle fits that. I don't know about Nwora. I think Thybulle is notably better than KZ. I think defensively, Thybulle is, I don't know if he's made a team, but I think he's been in conversations for all defense. Like I think he's genuinely phenomenal on the defensive end. He's one of the better guys at deflections. I think getting through screens, and like he's so good at like rear view contesting. Like I think he's so good defensively that if that shot is falling on a given night, that he could be in closing lineups. You know, like I think that he has experience that KZ doesn't have. He doesn't quite fit into Sacramento's $4.02 million trade exception. Barely does not, but you know, there's ways to make that salary work with Alex Len or Terrence Davis are the two that stand out to me. I really like Thybulle. I think Thybulle fits kind of what you were just saying there, like a better, more experienced KZ.
Yeah, I'd agree. He's a bona fide rotational player, and KZ Okpala is a fringe player on most teams. If or maybe not a player at all on most teams, probably a fringe player NBA wise on some teams. And I've been a big fan of him. I think the most disappointing thing with him is I thought he would get better offensively to show that he could even be serviceable on that end, and it's really not there. Like he in a lot of ways he's regressed.
He's averaging 2.7 points per game.
Yeah, not even scoring though. I mean, like, can you move the ball? Can you be an offensive rebounding force? Can you bring your shooting percentage up just a little bit? It's not like you look at Ben Simmons, right? And Ben Simmons, who, when right, is an elite ball movement playmaker type of player. Can you get some of that? Because you don't have any of it. But he is, and it's crazy because he's such a bright, intelligent player. He's one of my favorite personalities in the league. I used to love his bubble podcasts that he would do, the video stuff that he would do. Yeah, man, he's a guy that I think if he came to Sacramento, he'd be one of the most infectious personalities on a team that has a few infectious personalities already. I think fans would really, really like him from that standpoint. And defensively, he's stellar. I think he's better than KZ Okpala overall, and I think he's a better defender than KZ Okpala as well. So I'd be all for it. So yeah, it's a guy that would be fun to see in a Kings uniform.
Yeah,
Australian connection with Delhi.
Oh, there you go.
Think about that.
He was a two-time second-team All NBA defender. But again, like what Sean said, like the regression, and it's not just that you're right. He's not just. It's
No.
not just that he doesn't score. I mean, he's shooting 33.3% from three this season, but he's also only playing 12 minutes a game. He's almost out of the
Right.
rotation.
And
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 I
they're
they're,
all
wonder.
wide open.
yeah, yeah. Well, but he's a horrible, horrible rebounder. Like, and
Right.
he's not a passer at all. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's so limited in what he does that you have to wonder, does it work in Sacramento? Does it work when you need the spacing for all these guys? And I'm not sure. It's something that they'll have to look long and hard at, but you also have to pay him. That's the other problem. And he's a restricted free agent at the end of the season. And who knows what he's going to make? I mean, it's kind of like a toss up, right? So I think the Kings are in an interesting position because everything that I keep hearing from them is that, like, yeah, they're not going to make a move just to make a move. They do understand that they have holes, but they also need to make moves that have like long-term viability financially. So what you don't want to do is get into the situation like the Atlanta Hawks where they ended up signing all these guys because they had cap space, but the cap space was so short-lived because then you had players going into extensions and going from, like Trae Young making $8 million a year to making $28 million a year and not having the money to be viable once all the contracts kicked in. And the Kings have to be concerned because Sabonis is playing so well that he's looking more and more like a supermax player and someone who could make upwards of like high 30s or $40 million a year. You already have Fox. It's a full max player making $32 million, $34 million, $36 million over the next couple of years. So how do you manage your roster, make moves that make sense for you today and not disrupt unity, but also for the next 5 years because you don't want to just make the playoffs once and be done. So like this is a complex puzzle that Monty and Wes are working with. And so I think it's interesting that we're seeing a bunch of players that are mentioned that are upgrades, but are they tremendous upgrades? Can they change the course of the season? Can they tighten things up? Can they make Mike Brown's defense actually work? And I don't know. Like, I don't know if any of the players that we're hearing can actually play honest, good to goodness minutes for the Sacramento Kings. They're not players that would step on the court and instantly get 20 to 25 minutes a night and be able to make a huge impact, at least some of the names that we're hearing so far.
And I think that's fine. Like, you're the third seed. I think that if they made no moves, I honestly wouldn't have an issue with it. I think then you're talking about buyout market, which, quietly, I think the Kings could look a little bit enticing to certain guys, depending on what names. I have no clue, honestly, what names could eventually be available there as of right now. But I think that if they didn't make any moves, I would understand. Like, you're the 3 seed right now. I think you're playing great basketball. Sure, you want to be able to capitalize on that, but you don't want to. It's just tricky to toe. Like James is saying, you don't want to mess with what you have going right now. That clearly is a good thing. I think that $4 million TPE stands out a lot to me. I'm gonna have to do more research on guys that will fit into that. But I really think that when you're talking about like Alex Len, Terrence Davis, Rashawn Holmes, and I think they have 9 different second round picks to work with, that like you only can get so much. Ideally, if you can add another guy that is a part of the rotation coming off the bench, that'd be a great get for those pieces that I mentioned. But I wouldn't hate if they did nothing.
Sean?
Yeah, I don't think they're going to feel like they've got a gun to their head. You're third in the West, and you've been able to sustain success. And it looks like, while I wouldn't bet they stay third or go higher, I don't think I've mentioned it before. I don't think they're going to fall out of that. They've shown the ability to kind of hold and sustain. I don't think they're going to fall, past 7. Hopefully they can keep above the play-in tournament. And that's barring any kind of major setback. From they've had the luxury of health on their side. So as long as things don't take a turn in that regard, I think they can kind of hold their positioning above the 7th seed. I think they're going to be very aggressive, though. I think they will go out and try to find something that they need. My thing is, and it's kind of hasn't changed much. I wondered it a month ago if I would think differently than I do going into the trade deadline a month ago, and I haven't. Like I feel like they've identified what they want. I just don't know that they have enough to get what they ultimately want, and I think that's what's going to be, because really with the play-in tournament being what it is, you just don't really have a lot of sellers. Like everyone is trying to buy. And you look at a team like Toronto, and we keep talking about Toronto because they've got a lot of pieces that are so vastly probably overvalued, to be honest, by a lot of teams that would love to have some of those pieces. Pascal, Anunoby, and Van Vliet kind of just rise to the surface there. And there might be teams out there that are over valuing what those guys could potentially bring to their roster. And I think it all trickles back to the trade with Minnesota made for Gobert out of Utah, and what they gave up to land somebody like him. Because I don't think there's going to be a lot of desperate teams, and the Kings will not be operating out of a desperation going into the trade deadline, because they can not make a move and still probably be okay. And then there's a lot of teams that have to take a long look in the mirror. I think the Kings won't take as long of a look, but there's a lot of them. They're going to say, do we need to be buyers? Do we need to be where we are? Should we be sellers? Meaning that, there's only probably 2 games that separate a lot of these teams from being outside the play-in tournament. And even if you go out and buy something, is it really going to help you all that much? And that's ultimately where, I kind of poke fun at the Miles Plumlee situation, where it's like, yeah, he kind of addresses a need, but should you do that move? Like, is it really going to equate anything into wins and losses? Is it really going to be a move that kind of puts you over the top? And I'm not picking on Miles, because I like Miles Plumlee. I'm just saying I'm picking on a lot of those players that we talk about that, okay, well, what's that really look like in the wins-loss column? Can that really help you win a series? Because I've said from the get-go, whatever happens in a one-game tournament, that it is what it is. But I feel like Sacramento, just the way they're built and the way they play, could probably be a tough out in a series. I really do, even for a team that doesn't really have a lot of experience.
You're so disrespectful. You called him Miles and not Mason.
Put some respect Mason on the Plum Dog Millionaire.
Come on, man, go Duke.
Hey, I got to be honest, man. If they can get Plumlee for a second-round pick and salary dumps, I think that's a move that cements you as a better team. Like, it might not.
I don't see Charlotte doing that. They maybe, but I just don't see Charlotte wanting to do that.
He's an unrestricted free agent and 32 years old at the end of the season. There's talk that they might even buy him out if he's not traded. Yeah, I don't think so either, especially the way he's playing. But, they have no chance. And so, would they take something for nothing? And then they could always try to go back and retain him. If I'm the Kings, I'm knocking on that door pretty hard and saying, look, what can we work out here? And then on top of that, if they go out and get one of these other young, athletic, 6'6", 6'7", 6'8", 3-4 combo guys that can play defense and maybe hit a 3, and are sort of fringe rotation but might work in your rotation, I'm down for that. If there's a secondary move that makes sense, because it's either that or do we even dare, what is your dream scenario? What's the big move that I certainly, if I'm the Kings, I'm not really considering John Collins. It looks like Markkanen is off the table. What is it that what's a perfect fit to make this team better for this year and years to come? Is it OG Anunoby, knowing that you're going to have to give up 2 or 3 first-round picks, and even that might not be enough? I don't know.
Pascal Siakam. They just don't have enough for him.
You still think Pascal's the guy?
To me, it's the guy that, him, Paul George. I think there's guys that I can identify as being fantastic in a Kings uniform alongside a Ferrari like De'Aaron Fox and a brilliant playmaker like Domantas Sabonis and a double-double machine, and somebody who, whether it's Harrison Barnes or Keegan Murray, whatever, but you're not getting Pascal Siakam without moving Keegan Murray and likely another pick. It's going to take a boatload to get somebody like him.
Yeah.
Yeah, could it be a smaller move that, bigger than what we'd been talking about previously, but smaller than a Siakam, a Alex Caruso? Maybe you'd prefer a forward or wing for this team, but something along those lines, And I look at the Derek White deal that was Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, and Boston's 2022 first-round pick as a comparable package. Caruso's one of the better perimeter defenders in the league. I think obviously this team could use something like that. Like, I think that, just something to consider. I think it's tough, obviously, with their first round pick situation. Are you willing to put a 28, 29 first on the table and limited protections? Like, that's very far out. Is Chicago have interest in that? Like,
you can't
I think
put
there's
limited
more middle
protections though. That's
on the 29, right?
Yeah, you can't have the 29 can't be protected because you can't trade your 2020. I mean 2030.
Which is fine too, by the way, because
wild.
I'm
We're talking about
anti-protection.
2030. We're talking about 2030.
We are 2030, man. No, and as you know, James, I'm anti-protections. I don't like the handlebars of just let it go. Just do it. Top three maybe, but what are you doing? Just knock it off, right? Just cut it out.
Go ahead, Brenden.
Sean is anti-protection.
I am. I don't like it. It's
like, it was coming.
I will say if it's I just got that. That's very funny.
Sean has littered the world with small Seans that he doesn't know.
Not that I know of. Not that I know
of. Brilliant.
Jesus, man.
Yeah.
That's great.
We got a
we guys,
we got an
can I give you a name?
Guy.
Can I give you a name that I've heard recently that the Kings actually get to play in the very next game?
Yep.
Just a name that's popped up, Josh Richardson.
Yes, he's a perfect fit. He's a guy that steps in and actually helps you. He's a good age. What is he, 29? Final year of a deal, I believe. I'm just throwing stuff out there that I think and not sure
it's
on.
The $12 million salary
he's
for
a
me.
hell of a guy. I don't know.
I've never met him, but I swear he's a great dude.
No, I like the 3-and-D potential. I think he's the right type of guy. It's the $12 million salary for me that's kind of interesting and makes it a little tough. Like, is that Rashawn Holmes that we're talking about? Or are you putting 3 people out in exchange? Like, I think that $12 million salary is a little tough for the Kings unless we're talking Rashawn Holmes.
Well, yeah, but I mean, if you can, I don't think they'll take Rashawn Holmes' salary. Yeah, he makes $12 million.
Actually, San Antonio has cap space as well. Actually,
yeah. So they might want to kill cap space over the next couple of years while they rebuild. So they might be willing to take on Holmes, but you're gonna have to give up a couple of seconds and stuff. So I like Josh Richards. I like him. There's a couple of guys that we keep hearing like kind of tossed out there.
McDermott on the same team, kind of interesting. Played with Sabonis before.
I think if you go in that, I need that guy to be a rim protector. Like I think Trey Lyles has shown enough to basically be a little bit of that role. I like the stretch forward. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like if you're going big, make it a rim protector.
What about the guy that you and I have heard like murmurs here and there about? Are we gonna say that name or no?
Darius Bazley.
Yeah, because I've heard the same thing.
Look, he's interesting. It's just he hasn't played a whole hell of a lot. So this I don't know that it's something that totally helps you out this year, but it's something that you might have an inkling on a guy and how he maybe plays for the future a little bit. I don't know.
I think the interesting thing with
it's a name I've heard. It's just not really
move the needle name.
Right.
Yeah. But I mean, first of all, he came into Sacramento a couple of times and beat up the Kings, which that doesn't take much. He's fallen out of the rotation right now. Well, not out of the rotation, but he's not playing a lot. We're talking about a 22-year-old dude who, like last season, 10.8, 6.3 rebounds, a block a game.
He rebounds very well.
Yeah, his 3-point numbers are a little sketch. His second year in the league, 13.7 points, 7.2 rebounds, 1.8 assists, and he actually averaged 0.5 blocks per game. So not great, but long, athletic, one of those wingspan guys that my problem is anytime you're dealing with OKC, you're dealing with dudes who have got to do whatever they want on the court for a couple of years because nobody cares whether they win or lose. And those aren't the guys like where, Josh Richardson has played for winners and he's been in pressure situations and he's been there before. He's also coachable. He's been coached by some of the greats in the game. at all of his stops.
And he also comes from defensive programs. Like you talk about Spurs, even though how bad they are, they've got a pretty high defensive rating, and it's, I think you look at he played in Miami. I mean, the guys, he comes from great NBA pedigree.
Yeah, I remember
Boston,
it was
Philly.
Yeah.
It was him, yeah,
around.
that they wouldn't make the Jimmy Butler trade for. That's what held up the Jimmy Butler trade forever, was that they didn't want to put Josh Richardson in the deal. So, yeah. I mean, he's got talent. He can do some things. He plays defense. He knows what he's doing. I think he could step in and instantly make a difference on your team. Sort of a rich man's Glenn Robinson III, if you will.
And I will.
Yeah, he might be the seventh guy in the rotation. Like, Malik has been struggling. Like, I think that Josh Richardson would be great for this team. Perimeter defense, knocks down open shots.
Yeah.
I think that's a great target.
Yeah, short-term rental. And again, you're not going to have to give up a lot for him. Yeah, I think this is where we're talking about, though. He's 29 years old. I think the Kings are going to play on the fringe here. They're not going to take the big swing. At least I don't think.
Would you consider that playing on the fringe?
Him?
Josh Richardson? You would?
Yeah, I mean, I think he, like, as far as, like, this is
I think what I'm... Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I kind of put him in the same thing as Plumlee. Like, I still think that you're looking at, like, the back end of your rotation, 8, 9, 10 men, right, for this team. Not that they're going to be that situation everywhere that they go, but especially Plumlee. I think, Plumlee can be a starter in the league still. But there are teams that are going to look at them, and, if I'm Charlotte, I'm trying to get the Kings and, like, the Denver Nuggets in a bidding war to see what I can get from Mason Plumlee. Because I think he fits both teams and what they do, and he fits as their backup to, because they all have played, basically, they play with that big, that passes and, center of the universe guy. But I still think that, he's an expiring contract, just like Josh Richardson.
Yeah. Well, and that's Richardson's what I was talking about. Like, I think talent wise, I think it's bigger than a fringe move. I think it's a substantial move. It's not a home run, but I think it's the type of talent they need to add. It's a poor man's version of the talent they should ultimately add. But for this season, for a type of playoff push, I give that a bigger than a fringe move.
Okay.
But you guys have heard, I've been preaching 3-and-D guys forever. Like, that's to me, and he's not a long-term fit, maybe, but I don't think he's a long-term fit. You need to be better in that position. But for what you are currently, that's why I give it a bigger boost than like a fringe type of move.
I would be okay with Josh Richardson and Harrison Barnes both signing extensions or coming back on extensions and being a combo, like the three, part of a 3 forward rotation or a 4 forward rotation for the next couple of years. I mean, they both still have plenty of, like, legs underneath them. They're going to be in the league for a while. So
I feel like a lot of guys on this bench are somewhat one-dimensional or just heavily feature on one side of the ball. Like Davion, obviously defensively, but he has his offensive struggles. I think Malik offensively, defensively, not so much. Trey is maybe the closest to playing both sides, but I don't think he's an impact defender or anything like that. Like Richardson would be a guy that could do both, and they really don't have many of those off the bench.
No, it's true. Yeah. I don't know. It's interesting. I'm down with it. I would like to see the Kings be aggressive. I would like to see them, again, I don't think there's anything that says you can't go get a Mason Plumlee and a Josh Richardson. Like, you need to be active right now. You've got a good team. If you can bolster your core without damaging, the chemistry and culture that you're building, then I think you should really think long and hard about it. You got an opportunity here to cement yourself as a 3 seed to possibly, stay host a home court first round. If you stay in the top 4, I mean, like, you should be pushing to try to to try to make this team better right now. And if there's a better deal that we don't see, where it's a guy who's 25, 26 years old that, you have more team control over, I'm okay there too. But like, the Kings can, look at expiring guys. They can look at short-term rentals. That's the position they're in this year, as opposed to any other year where they've never been, looking at short-term rentals, because why look at short-term rentals here just for the last 25 games of the year? That's typically when you hand the game over to your young guys that you're trying to build on the backside. So
it's one of the more entertaining parts of the year for sure, where apparently Mason Plumlee takes a first rounder. BS. Apparently Dorian Finney-Smith is available for a star. Yeah, okay. The reporting this time of year is always fun.
For a star? But see...
Do you even consider Dorian Finney-Smith a star?
The reporting was that Dallas is willing to make him available for a star.
I don't even consider him a star. How would you...
No.
Right.
No.
Who's trading a non-star for a star?
Right.
Like, you can't even do that in 2K.
That's true. And we're talking about, again, a 29-year-old who will be 30 in May, and Dorian Finney-Smith, who's averaging 8.8 points per game and shooting 34.6. I mean, basically, like,
Not
you
a
can
star.
make the argument whether he is better than Josh Richardson or not. Like, I think it's probably a toss-up, and he's owed a lot of money. 13.4 next year, 14.4, and 15.4. I guess those aren't horrible numbers, and you could probably put him in a lineup where he's your starting three, just because he's a good defender and everything else. But boy,
I like
tough.
him. He's just not. He's not a star. Let's not be silly.
Yeah, let's not be silly. All right, do we have?
Brendan, did you watch Life by chance? I'm really waiting for that.
I did not.
Disrespectful.
Brand,
Apparently I need to watch Rocky too. I don't know.
You've never seen Rocky?
No, you won't like it. Trust me. I'm not going to steer you to a movie that you won't like. And I already know you won't like that. So don't waste your time.
I don't know. There's a murder mystery involved in it, Sean. It's procedural. No, there's not, Brennan.
He's not going to like it. What did you watch? Anything?
Have you watched anything, Brennan?
Nothing. Basketball.
I saw The Fablemans. Fablemans is fantastic.
Oh.
Boy, it was good.
I tried to watch Everything Everywhere All at Once. Is that what it's called?
Don't say anything bad about it, James. I will hurt you.
You haven't seen it yet?
No,
Or
I
you
love
have?
it. No, it's fantastic.
I got about, I think, 2/3 of the way through. You have to be paying attention really, really closely the whole time, and it's all over the board. I don't love it.
It's called Everything Everywhere All at Once.
I guess it reminds me a little bit of, like, did you ever see Dirk Gently? With Elijah Wood, he's a detective.
No.
It reminds me a little bit of that. It's just chaotic and all over the place and like strange, and it's gonna take a second sitting to get through it. I don't think I could watch it all, which is unusual. Like, usually I can watch, the whole thing. And you have to be in the right mood, like where you're fully engaged. And I don't know that I have that time until maybe the All-Star break. So, I don't know. Do we have any final thoughts?
Patrick Beverley bringing a camera over to the ref is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. And LeBron's reaction, LeBron got fouled very clearly, right? I get why he's pissed, but his reaction of falling to his knees and headed the floor was just hilarious.
On the Celtics court, by the way.
Yes.
Like, that's an image that is not going away ever, of him being on his hands and knees. Like, Chandler Parsons had something on the podcast, and it went everywhere, saying that his French bulldog could get run over by the mailman and he wouldn't react that way. And look, some people are taking it way too literally because that shit's funny. Like, that is a funny, good for Chandler Parsons. Like, that is funny, just to bring attention to the moment. LeBron James, you are one of the greatest players of all time, if not the greatest. What are you doing acting like that? I mean, I get it. I get it. But I think it's funny, though, that the comment after, like, that doesn't happen to any other team. Like, Kings are like, hold my beer. Like, come on, man.
You remember a couple of years ago where the Kings were up by 1 in the final, 5 seconds. LeBron James bull rushed Harrison Barnes, elbowed him to the ground, knocked him to the ground, and got a foul call, hit the 2 free throws, and the Kings lost by 1 point on the pair of free throws. And then the NBA came back the next day in the last 2 minutes and apologized for that it should have been an offensive foul, and the Kings would have won the game. Harrison Barnes goes to the free throw line with barely any time left and should have had that opportunity.
The last 2 minute report is what it is. It's an acknowledgement of a mistake. Sure, I get it. And some people hate seeing the whatever. And they're used to hold, whether they make them public or not, they use to hold those officials accountable. The league uses those. They're just making it public. But what I don't get is, why does the NBA board of referees come out and apologize when LeBron James does it, but they won't do it for any other team? I almost cursed. They don't do it for any other team like that. It's just insane to me.
The wording is crazy. The wording is crazy. It's, quote, "This play will weigh heavily and cause sleepless nights."
Where's the apology for
the most pathetic pandering to a player that I've ever seen.
I also don't respect to LeBron. I don't want to take anything away from him, and there is a but coming, but I don't like when he plays the victim. When are you a victim of anything? Come on.
You know what I thought he looked like? And I talked about this on D-Lo and Casey yesterday, and they had no idea what I was talking about, but you'll get it. It's the scene from Platoon where they leave Willem Dafoe behind in the helicopter. Tom Berenger screws him over and leaves him behind. You know what I'm talking about, right, Sean? Where he's got his hands in the air and he's reaching for the helicopter. Yeah. That's what it felt like. Hey, LeBron, get off your ass. I mean, seriously, let's stop crying. You know how many games this season? Someone did a graphic on it. How many missed calls in the last 2 minute report, and it's 34 missed calls in Kings games, and 13 went in favor of the Kings. The other 21 went in favor of the other team.
Where is the apology for the McDaniels travel last night in Minnesota? That to me was. I mean, look,
Sean.
Yeah, LeBron, you got fouled. We get it, but
I'm looking at the last 2 minute report. It's not there.
So
it's not there.
Did he put the ball down in time?
No. Okay, that's it. How much time is
unsure.
left? How much
it's
time
not
is
on
left?
There?
Turnover traveling. At correct no call, McDaniels establishes his left foot as a pivot foot and legally lifts his right foot. That it's on here as a correct no call. They said he did not travel.
I thought that was terrible.
Erroneous.
Yeah, man. Clearly, I don't have what it takes to be an official. That's fine.
Well, you know why? Because you don't have empathy for LeBron James. You can't put out a press release. You can't put out a press release, Sean, that apologizes. That's just not you. That's what makes you not being an NBA official at this point. Anyway, yeah. Okay, so that was final thoughts. Do we have any other final thoughts? Sean, do you have anything?
D'Amico Ryans took the job with the 49ers.
Oh, with the Texans.
Happen.
With the Texans.
Yeah, I'm all over the place right now. I need a nap. Yes, to the Texans. But what's crazy is now Kyle Shanahan gets to go out and try and find another defensive coordinator again. But that's what's supposed to happen. So as far as Kings go, I don't think I said. I think they're going to go. How much games are left? 5. I think they'll go 5-2 on this trip. Since I never gave an answer. That's my final thought.
That's what I think too.
And check out Fabelmans. It's a really good movie, and it's kind of autobiographical of Steven Spielberg.
Yeah.
Would I like
Steven Spielberg?
We'll see how this
Brenden,
gets taken.
Is a director that is.
I know the name vaguely.
Sorry, buddy. Go ahead.
Normally, my girlfriend's on my side with me about these movie things, but we were scrolling through things the other day, and she came to realize I've never seen The Breakfast Club.
Oh, God damn it, Brenden.
Well, no, he's not going to like that movie.
That was my question. Would I?
It's too old.
You should. Have you seen any of the other John Hughes movies? Have you seen Pretty in Pink? I've
never heard that name.
Here's why you should probably watch it, Brenden, because you live in Sacramento, and Molly Ringwald is from Sacramento. So, yeah.
He doesn't know who Molly Ringwald is.
Molly Ringwald was main actress in that movie.
Pretty in
Pink as well, and she hasn't really done much lately. But have you seen Lady Bird?
No, but I know it's recorded in Sac, right?
And takes place in Sac.
Yeah.
It's like a love letter to Sacramento. The director and writer is from Sacramento. It's Greta Gerwig. You should watch that.
Yeah.
Timothy Chalamet's in it.
Yes, you need to watch Breakfast Club, and you need to watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and you need to watch
Lady
16
Bird.
Candles.
Watch Lady Bird before those because I think you will like Lady Bird. I think the other ones are too old for you to like.
No,
and
you got to watch Weird Science.
And they're not. Let's be honest, they're not great movies, James. They're
they're
good
all
movies.
phenomenal.
They're
phenomenal.
All phenomenal.
They're phenomenal. My boys
Weird
watch
Science
them
is not a
again
4-star movie, sir.
Weird Science, come on, man.
No. Although
got the great Bill Paxton in it. R.I.P. That's Chet. Chet.
Was there ever been a hero named Chet, like in any movie? No, never. It's a terrible name. Sorry to disrespect the Chets of the world. But if you're named Chet, you're doomed for failure. You're not going to be. No Pulitzer Prize winner was ever named Chet.
Chet Holmgren is that guy.
The best Chet I can think about is Chet Lemon, the Tigers player, baseball.
Oh,
in the 80s.
All right.
Holmgren.
Yeah. Chet Lemon. He played
we don't
on
know yet. He's hurt. You know why? Because his name's Chet.
There we go. He was on that team with Lou Whitaker and Alan Trammell and
man.
Kirk Gibson.
Chet.
Yeah. All right. So
I think Life Isn't Too Old. You'll like that one.
Oh man, he's got to watch all those other movies. That just has to happen.
He won't like them, James. He won't.
Come on,
Look
Brenden.
at his eyes. He's like, "What do you mean?"
Come on, man. All right.
I'm on your side, Brenden.
That's going to do it for this episode
not.
of the Kings Beat podcast. If you're still watching while we're arguing over whether Brenden should watch John Hughes movies or not, give us a thumbs up if you're watching on YouTube. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. Also, join us for the Off the Record with the Kings Beat Virtual Happy Hour Part 11, The Columnist, with Aileen Voisin on Thursday from 5:30 to 7:30. It's going to be an absolute hoot. You are not allowed to record them.
I'm sorry, what?
A hoot. Give a hoot, don't pollute. Yep. It's going to be a good time. And there will be drinking. So things happen. I'm sure there might be some DeMarcus Cousins stories. I'm just saying. I have a feeling that there's going to be some DeMarcus Cousins stories. But definitely an intriguing guest on the happy hour. And if you're going to miss this one, you're going to regret it. So we get these two guys. They will be there, hopefully. But if not, it'll be a good time. So for Fox 40, Sean Cunningham and Brenden Nunes from the Kings Pulse podcast, I am James Ham, Kings Insider for ESPN 1320 and the Kings Beat. We'll see you next week.